Welcome everyone to our September Robson Ranch Technology Club meeting. We're doing something a little different this month. We've got a live video, which hopefully you're watching. Otherwise, you can watch it after the fact. And today our topic's going to be flying drones for fun. And I have here with me Steve to help, who'll be hopefully taking this over in a second and telling you some of his experiences with drones and so forth. Before I do that, let's see if there's anybody new to the club, hasn't seen us before or met with us before, then raise a hand, or at least if you don't raise a hand, you can send me or Steve an email and we'll add you to our email list. Our next meeting is going to be a month from now, again on the second Monday of the month at 7 o'clock. Not sure yet what kind of form it's going to take, whether it'll be a Zoom meeting or a Premiere Live or what yet. Well, we'll find out. But the topic then is going to be on laptops, and I'll talk to you a little bit about my experience as a kind of an avid Mac user, switching over platforms because of the new, I couldn't resist the new AMD chips that they put in some of these newer laptops. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. Anyway, no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Steve. And Steve, tell us a bit about this little hobby and what it would cost for us to get into it.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. It's really more of a passion for me. I'm a very visual person, so photography and now drones, because they are photography type devices, kind of segues right into what I love to do. And I've had a drone now for over a year, about a year and a half. And I started out with what I consider in the consumer lineup a top of the line drone. It's called the Mavic Pro 2. All right. And this guy is really a very powerful drone in the fact that it's got a 1-inch sensor camera, and it can really take off and wind gust almost at 25 miles an hour because of the thrust that it can take in the propellers as such. Pretty large size battery. It's heavy, it's big, it's not very portable. That's the problem. And recently I acquired the new Mavic Mini, and this guy is really an amazing piece of equipment in a drone in the fact that it weighs less than 250 grams. So as such, it doesn't require registration with the FAA. That doesn't mean that you have to not abide by the rules, okay, when it comes to flying your drone, in the fact that you still have to know the basic rules of not flying over people. You have to know the fact that you have airspace restrictions, and you also have to know a little bit about how to fly the drone itself. But what makes this guy so unique in the DJI, and both of these models are from DJI, which makes pretty much most of the drones that are out there right now, is that it comes with a self-tutorial. When the first time that you're able to take this up, it actually walks you through some graphics on the screen, and the screen being your phone, it sets it up on the phone through the controller. So I'll go through that in a minute. What I've discovered about this is it's very portable because it folds up so that it can go in to my pocket. And as I'm walking around Robeson, no one even knows I have a drone on me, okay? This can go in one pocket, and the controller goes in the other. And the way you connect it so that you can see what you're doing when you're flying it, you connect your mobile phone up to it, and you'll see what the camera sees, and you'll get some information on the screen that shows you how much battery you have, whether it's safe to take off. You need to calibrate the compass, and the compass is where it gets its orientation when it's flying. And sometimes if you move a certain distance away from the last place you had flown the drone, you'll need to recalibrate it. So it's good to have a great display. But what I've found is that, yeah, question, go ahead.
Have you ever lost it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Paul. In that recently I was flying this, and what I discovered, it didn't actually registered when I bought it, but the only sensors you have on this are in the front and the rear. There's no sensor in the back, in the bottom of it, or on the side. So I was flying over this tree, and I thought I had cleared the tree, and I wanted to come down some, and it landed on some limbs. Now, when I've never really hung up a drone before, because the advantage of the larger drone here, the Mavic Pro 2, is it's got multiple sensors, side firing sensors, front, rear, and top and bottom as such. So it's virtually foolproof. That's big, and it doesn't have a lot of the capabilities mobile-wise of the smaller one. I could actually fly this in my house if I wanted to, and some realtors are actually using, they're hiring people to fly these in their homes and taking videos. But I'm finding that as I go out with it and I'm walking around Robeson to document whatever I see that I want to take some images of, it's so much more convenient to have something that's pocketable. It's lightweight. It doesn't take much space up when you take off, not near as big as that, but it's so simple. I mean, it really, there's not a lot of settings. There are a few camera settings you can adjust. On the other one, it's a huge amount of settings. Okay. So yes, you can crash them. I do highly recommend the insurance that they provide. That DJI provides. You have, like, I believe it's 24 hours or 48 hours to get that insurance, and it's minimal considering the loss of the complete drone. All right. Now, you'd have to have some pieces of it. You can't let it fly away, and that's one of the FAA rules, regardless of whether it's registered or not. Never lose visual sight of your drone, ever. And you can't fly over people. Those are two cardinal rules as such that you need to be aware of. Now, what I found a difference between the two drones is that since I'm using my phone here on this one, Hicks Field pops up a lot, especially where I live here at Crestview in Compton, and it will unlock that authorization for me. Before, on the larger one, what it would do is it would allow me to go up, and it would just hit a geofence, and it couldn't go forward and wouldn't go further up. It could only come down and backwards. And what I've discovered through this process of the Mini is that I probably need to be providing internet connection off my phone to the drone itself so I can unlock those authorizations. Now, if I was to take either one of them and go up on the new street Cartwright here, I would more than likely enter into the airspace for Denton Enterprise, and I'd have to, at that point, get authorization electronically to fly any further. And there is a process of doing that, but it's done through the web, and you have to tell them when you're going to fly and what date and time and why. And more than likely, unless it's really compelling, they're not going to give you one, airspace-wise. Now, you ask about cost. This one here, the Mini, with the Fly More kit, which is a carrying case, okay, and 3 extra batteries and a fast charger, and some additional propellers is $499, which I thought is very reasonable for the kind of quality and performance you get out of that guy. Okay, it comes in at an entry point of $399, so $100 more for 2 additional batteries, more propellers, and the fast charger. All right. Whereas,
Another question.
yes, sir.
What's the flight time?
They're approximately, believe it or not, about the same. The battery on this one is a rather skinny one here. Let me get this thing out or not. They're a little tricky on this one. There it is. That goes into the back end of this guy along with the micro SD. And I'm finding about 20 minutes. And the battery on this one pops out of the top here. And it usually gets about 25 to maybe 30 minutes as such. And obviously, there's a safeguard in the drones that if it gets to a low enough battery, they will return to home. So what they do is they register return to home point when you take off. It'll actually go up to about 4 feet, register that GPS longitude and latitude for return to home, and then take off. So therefore, if it gets to a point that it can't get back to you, it knows it's smart enough on either drone that it knows I only have so much battery, I better come on back home. It'll return to home with what battery you have
Another
left.
question.
Yes.
It's kind of related. What happens when your phone dies?
Well, that's a good question. And that occurred to me today. I thought my phone had died. I wasn't actually flying it. But either one, the controller will allow you to fly it. You just won't be able to see a lot of the critical information as to battery. So you could just dead stick it back in. Okay?
Is there a button you can press to just return to home?
Yes. On the Mini, there is a button right here. And that's your return to home. The button over here is your power, and you have toggles as such. These are the antenna. So yes, you do have a return home button. So if your phone did die, okay, you hit that button, it'll return to home. Now, what's important is each time when you do take off, you want to look around and see what the highest, structure is. Because if you've got, say, you're at the baseball park and it's
Or a tree.
you want to make sure return to home has a high enough altitude in feet, so it will climb over that to be able to come back in. All right. Now, one advantage that I have with the larger drone here is a dedicated
Quite a lot heavier.
display. Okay. Now, this adds substantially to the cost, substantially, but the display is high enough in what they call nit, N-I-T, pixels, so outside it doesn't wash. On the phone, if you got direct sunlight, you're probably not going to fly it much because it will wash out pretty bad, whereas this won't. So you got a lot more professional application with this type. Now, you don't have to have this guy. It comes with its own separate controller. I don't have one to show you. Very similar to this one here for the Mini. Not much different. It just locks in the phone there. But I still have the ability to use my phone separately here. And if I wanted to supply the data, then I could by sharing that off the phone. Okay?
Mhm.
All right. So what purposes would you have for either one of these? Well, for me, it's capturing the moment. All right. So I'm out, I'm looking around at Robeson, and I thought, wow, the perspective of lifting that drone off, either one, either the large one or the Mini, about 10 to 12 feet at the corner of my house gives a perspective of the home that is unlike any that you'll ever get with a camera, unless you had a really tall ladder and a boom stick on the camera, which most people aren't going to do. That's too tricky. All right. So obviously realtors are using it. But this brings us into certification. Okay. What's required to fly a drone? Let's talk about that. If it's more than 250 grams, which obviously the larger one is, then you must certify it. Okay. And recently they required the certification number, registration, not certified, but registration number be visible on the drone itself. Okay. So that's one thing you have to do. It costs $5. You go through the FAA site and you register it. You give them the serial number. I believe that's for the purposes is if the drone gets away and causes some damage to someone or property, and they acquire that drone, they can trace it back to you. Okay. Whereas the Mini doesn't. Again, that doesn't alleviate yourself from any responsibility for knowing how to fly it. Okay. But the big difference comes in the intent to fly. All right. What is the intent to fly? For a long time, I believed that for probably about a year that I was okay to fly the larger drone anywhere I wanted and provide that footage to anyone I wanted to, as long as I wasn't making money. But the FAA on a recent webcast informed me during a chat session that that's incorrect. The way the FAA sees it is your intent to fly. Is it for fun? And if it's not for fun, then it's considered commercial. If it's for fun, that's fun and recreation. So if I'm walking around with either drone, as long as I'm abiding with the basic rules, okay, of flying it and not, infringing on somebody's personal property, okay, and flying below 400 feet. That's another rule. Cannot fly it above 400 feet. I don't know anyone that could see past that. Maybe they could. Flying it beyond what I can see at, okay, and staying within the airspace that's required and not flying it over people. Those are really the basic rules. And as long as it's for my fun and recreation and it's registered, I'm okay. But once I get outside that boundary, even if I was to say, Robeson was to come to me and say, oh, we saw your shot of the sales center. We really wanted that. Can you give it to us? Not really, because at that point, I would be considered a commercial pilot, drone pilot, and I would need to have passed a test, okay? Because if I just gave it to them or they paid me money, doesn't matter. The intent of the flight was not for that purpose. Okay? Yeah. Questions?
No, going through my head. Well, first of all, intent. Intent is a strange thing. Because that example you gave, when you went up in the air and you took the pictures, your intent was not for it to be commercial. But then after the fact, it became commercial. Is that the same thing as, is that legal or illegal? I don't know.
It would be illegal. Okay, so let me give you an example. So if I go out and I walk around Robeson with the Mini and I see some shots I want to take or video, it does video as well, okay? The intent is for personal. That's from the time it takes off and lands, anything past that. That was a personal flight. My intent was not to go out and take images for Robeson Ranch. Regardless, if it's after the fact, that would make me in violation of the rule because I'm not going out to give the images away or even sell them. That's considered a commercial pilot. So the intent is what they gauge it on. Now, how do they police this? Well, that's a good question. All right. These drones take a lot of flack for things that probably they shouldn't. People think that they're flying over them to infringe on their personal rights, that they're flying and they're jeopardizing plane flights. They think that, they're flying, and sometimes they do. They fly over stadiums. They've had some recent ones. They flew over some baseball games, and that was direct violation, okay? But the intent is to fly safely and know the rules. Okay. And if you want to become a commercial drone pilot, then you give the FAA $160. You take a 60 question exam at a testing site, not open book. And you have to pass 70% of those questions to get your certification. Now, I carry a card that says, yes, I've registered my drone. So, for instance, say I was by Paul's house and I'm flying the drone and he's not happy with the noise, especially the big one. Yes. Yeah. And they have tried to shoot him out of there. So he calls the local police. And of course, it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm buzzing Paul's house. Okay. And he's not getting much rest. So the police come out and I'm still there and they could technically ask me for my drone license. I carry that with me at all times, either in the bag itself for the large drone. The smaller one doesn't need it. Okay. Now, if I become a commercial pilot, that license would actually be issued like a driver's license. You'd actually get a hard copy of the license itself, and it's good for 2 years. Now, that doesn't mean I'd have to go back and take all those 60 questions again in the exam, but there would be an update probably that would be necessary on the test after 2 years to update any new information that would come out. Now, what the FAA is trying to do now is to provide certification, not registration, that's the drone itself, but certification on me as a recreational pilot. And that's to ensure that I understand the basic FAA laws governing drone flight.
Yeah. So it's more like an amateur radio.
Very similar. Yes.
Certification process.
Very similar. Now, the FAA could care less whether I can fly the drone or not. Mm-hmm. If I fly it out there and dump it in the pond, they could care less. All right. Mm-hmm. As long as I didn't hurt somebody that's in the pond. Okay. Yeah. In the process. They're just concerned with the overall governing laws that have been set up for for drone pilots themselves.
Yeah.
All right. Questions?
Good. I can't think of any. Oh, range. I was thinking about range. Mm-hmm. And also what happens when you do lose sight of it? Are you relying on your cell phone image to be able to kind of bring you back, or and you don't want to hit the come back button?
Those are good questions. And each drone operates differently. The Mavic Pro 2 uses OcuSync, which is a much improved signal. And it's very unlikely that you would fly past what it could communicate with, whereas the Mini is really a Wi-Fi signal. All right. And don't ask me how it works if your phone is dead, but somehow it can still be controlled, because I've watched the videos and know that it can be controlled with a controller. They set that up. All right. Yeah. But what you want to do is not to be watching the display all the time. And if for some reason you cannot find it, return to home.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened to me the other day is I didn't know where it went. Okay.
You lost it. Yeah.
It went into the tree, and I go, oh, I bet it went in the tree. And I looked on the display of the phone, and immediately all I could see were tree branches. I go, it's in that tree. Okay. So I immediately just turned off the controller. I didn't want any propellers to be broken or motor wiped out. And I was able to safely retrieve the drone from the tree and not have any damage. So,
well, if you couldn't see it, how did you know where it was?
Okay. Well, I knew that it was by the tree. I thought it was on the other side of the tree, but it wasn't that far away. It was the display itself tells you how far away it is, and it kind of gives you a guide of the direction. Okay. So I walked toward the tree, and it has lights on it that flash. Okay. Here and here in the back. And I could see up in the tree the flashing lights. Yeah. So that's why I knew where it was. But you do need to keep visual contact. It wasn't that I lost visual contact. The mistake was the perception of two things.
Right.
That it had it had a sensor on the bottom of it, which it does not. I know that now. It looks like it does, but these are screws. There is no sensor. So when I told it, I thought I had cleared the tree to come down and so I could aim it up for the image I wanted to get. It wasn't clear to the tree. I should have walked toward the drone as I was flying it. But, you know, some of this takes a lot of coordination. You don't want to walk into the pond when you're looking at the drone. And so it's just a matter of flying it, really, getting experience and taking it very slow and easy at first. You get accustomed at how it works and how it flies. The other thing you have to watch is weather conditions. And I actually have an app on my phone that will tell me good to fly or not good to fly based upon that exact GPS that the phone is reporting to the app. So if there is maybe, you know, some wind, say gust 15 miles an hour, that's on the surface level, that's fine. But as you take up and you go up, and you can tell it on the app how up you're going to go. If those winds are gusting more than 25 miles an hour, then I can't take the big one up. On this small mini, I won't even take it out if there's any gust at all. It's so lightweight that it will try to stay, but it could blow it. And that's when you could have some real damage too. So you think you've got control and it just can't keep up and it goes right into a tree sideways, then you're probably going to lose your drone totally.
Thank you for insurance. Yeah.
Thank you for insurance.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I think we'll just close up now. And if you've got any questions, there should be down below here, there should be some way to put comments and questions in, and we'll get Steve to respond to them. So anyway, see you next month. Otherwise, have a good month. Thank you. How's that?
Good.